Zinal Masiko grew up knowing one thing very clearly: she was never the favorite. At 27, living her own quiet life in Johannesburg, she could still feel the weight of being the forgotten one in her family. Every phone call home, every family gathering, every comment from her parents seemed to circle around one person: Ayanda, her younger sister. Ayanda was the golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. Saifo and Nambula praised her like she was a rising star, bragging about her achievements, her beauty, her charm. And when it came to Zinal, they barely noticed her. Sometimes they talked over her, sometimes they ignored her completely, almost like she was a ghost in her own family. So when the Thanksgiving invitation arrived, it didn't feel warm or welcoming. It felt more like an obligation, something sent just because it would look bad if they didn't. No excitement, no personal message, no "we want you here." Just a short, dry invite that made Zinal feel like an afterthought. Ayanda got phone calls, reminders, special plans. Zinal got silence. Even as an adult, the old sting was still there. She remembered birthdays where Ayanda got big celebrations while she got a quick, happy birthday. School events where her achievements were pushed aside so Ayanda could shine. It wasn't just favoritism, it was emotional neglect, and it had shaped her whole life. As Thanksgiving approached, Zinal couldn't shake the tension in her chest. She wondered why she should even bother showing up somewhere she'd never been seen, never been valued. Deep down, she already knew this family gathering was going to be the beginning of something different, something she couldn't yet name. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, the moment that changed everything didn't look dramatic at first. It happened at a family gathering in Durban, one of those loud, crowded events where everyone talks over each other, and Ayanda takes center stage like always. She arrived dressed to impress, smiling like a celebrity, and immediately started telling everyone about her big new promotion. People clapped, relatives congratulated her, and her parents looked like they were about to burst with pride. Saifo kept repeating, "That's my daughter," while Nambula bragged about how Ayanda was climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone her age. No one questioned anything, because in their eyes, Ayanda was perfect. Zinal was sitting quietly at the edge of the room, just listening. She knew Ayanda didn't have a promotion. In fact, she knew Ayanda wasn't even close to one. Weeks earlier, Ayanda had confessed to her that she was struggling at work, missing deadlines, and might even lose her job. Zinal had comforted her, kept her secret, and told her not to panic. So hearing Ayanda boast about a fake promotion felt strange, but Zinal stayed silent until a cousin asked an innocent question. "So what's your new position called?" Ayanda stumbled, clearly unsure, and before she could make up an answer, Zinal gently stepped in, trying to help. She said something simple like, "Oh, I thought they were still reviewing your performance?" She didn't mean harm. She wasn't trying to expose her. But the room went dead silent. Ayanda's smile froze. Her eyes widened in shock and embarrassment. And just like that, everything exploded. Ayanda burst into tears, dramatic and loud, like her whole world had collapsed. She started crying about how Zinal was always jealous, always trying to ruin her life. Relatives rushed to comfort her. Her parents immediately turned on Zinal, their faces full of anger. Saifo pointed a finger at her and said she should be ashamed. Nambula accused her of destroying Ayanda's reputation in front of the whole family. No one asked what really happened. No one asked Ayanda if she had lied. They just blamed Zinal instantly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Zinal tried to explain she didn't say anything hurtful, that she just slipped, but no one listened. Ayanda kept crying louder, hiding her face, shaking like she'd been deeply wounded. People gathered around her, as if she were the victim of some horrible attack. She soaked up the attention, leaning into every hug, every word of sympathy, while Zinal stood there alone, feeling smaller by the second. It was like watching a performance. Ayanda starring as the fragile princess, and Zinal cast as the villain. Within minutes, Zinal became the outsider, the troublemaker, the jealous sister. Relatives whispered about her. Some gave her cold looks. Saifo told her she had humiliated the family. Nambula said Ayanda's career might be ruined because of her. The whole scene felt unreal, like Zinal was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. By the time she walked out of that house, she felt shaken, heartbroken, and confused. All she had done was tell the truth, by accident. But that small slip had turned her family against her even more. In their eyes, Ayanda could lie and still be loved. Zinal could breathe wrong and be hated. And deep down, she sensed that this wasn't just a bad moment. It was the spark that would set everything on fire. A few days before Thanksgiving, Zinal was sitting in her small Johannesburg apartment, finishing up some work on her laptop, trying to move on from the uncomfortable family event. She kept telling herself it would blow over. Families fight, people calm down, things return to normal. She tried to believe it. She tried to hope. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. No greeting. No explanation. Just 5 cold words. "Don't come. You're not welcome." Zinal stared at the screen, thinking maybe she misread it. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But before she could respond, another message came through, this time from her father. It was even harsher. He said she had embarrassed the family, disrespected Ayanda, and brought shame to their name. He wrote that Ayanda needed space to heal, and Zinal's presence would ruin the holiday. It felt like a punch to the chest. She waited for another message, something softer, something human, but instead her father ended with, "Stay away. No love. No concern. Just rejection." A few minutes later, Ayanda posted a dramatic Instagram story about protecting your peace from toxic people, clearly aimed at Zinal. Relatives began liking it and commenting with heart emojis and supportive messages. No one asked Zinal what happened. No one cared about her side. The whole family chose their golden child and shut Zinal out completely. Zinal sat on her couch, phone in her hand, frozen. She wasn't angry at first, just confused. Hurt. She kept whispering to herself, "I didn't do anything wrong." But the messages kept echoing in her head like a threat. "Don't come. You're not welcome." Finally, the pain hit her all at once. Her chest tightened. Her eyes burned. Tears rolled down before she could stop them. She didn't cry loudly, just silent, shaking tears, the kind that come from deep inside. She felt abandoned, betrayed, exiled from her own blood. She thought about the little girl she used to be, always trying to make her parents proud, always trying to be seen. And now, even as a grown woman, she was still being treated like she didn't matter, like she was disposable. In that moment, the loneliness was overwhelming. She had no partner to call, no sibling who cared, no parent willing to listen. It felt like the whole world had turned its back on her. The apartment, usually peaceful, suddenly felt too quiet, like she'd been erased from something she once belonged to. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't look. She already knew what it would say: more blame, more insults, more accusations. They would call her jealous, bitter, dramatic. They would paint her as the villain to protect Ayanda's image. For a few minutes, she thought about replying, explaining, defending herself, begging them to understand. But she stopped. She wiped her face, took a deep breath, and put her phone down. For the first time in her life, she chose silence. She refused to beg for a place at a table where she was never wanted. She refused to chase people who only saw her as a problem. The pain was still heavy, but somewhere beneath it, a tiny spark of strength flickered. If her family didn't want her there for Thanksgiving, she would survive without them. Even if her heart felt shattered, she wasn't going to break. While her family treated her like a failure, Zinal was quietly building a life that none of them really understood. In Johannesburg, she wasn't the forgotten daughter. She wasn't the ghost in the background. She was a rising cybersecurity analyst, smart, sharp, and respected in her field. Every morning, she walked into her modern office with confidence, working on digital security systems for major companies. People trusted her. Her boss praised her. Colleagues asked for her help. In that world, she wasn't invisible at all. She was valuable. But Zinal never bragged about it. She didn't announce her achievements online, didn't send family updates, didn't show off her salary or her success. She was humble and private. She liked the peace of living quietly, saving her money, minding her business, and building her career step by step. Her apartment was small but beautiful, neat, cozy, filled with plants, soft lighting, and quiet music. She cooked for herself, treated herself kindly, and enjoyed her own company. No chaos, no drama, no competition. And yes, she was financially stable, more stable than anyone in her family thought. She had savings, investments, and a growing salary. She didn't depend on anyone. In fact, the truth was the complete opposite. Ayanda depended on her. Over the past few years, Ayanda had gotten herself into trouble more than once. Credit card debt, unpaid rent, a car loan she couldn't manage. Every time, she ran to Zinal, crying, begging, promising she would pay her back. And every time, Zinal helped. She transferred money, paid bills, cleared overdue balances, sometimes thousands at a time. She didn't tell her parents, didn't embarrass Ayanda, didn't demand recognition. She just quietly saved her sister from financial disaster, believing she was doing the right thing. She even once paid off a debt that could have taken Ayanda to court, protecting her from legal trouble and public shame. Ayanda never said thank you. Not once. And the parents, they never knew. They assumed Ayanda was successful and financially responsible. They assumed she was rising while Zinal was falling behind. They never asked how Ayanda managed her lifestyle. They just praised her blindly, while treating Zinal like she was less. Meanwhile, Zinal carried the weight alone. She remembered nights when she skipped buying herself things she needed, just so she could help Ayanda. She remembered sitting up late, transferring money with tears in her eyes, wondering why she always had to be the responsible one. But she kept doing it, hoping maybe, just maybe, her family would one day see her heart. Instead, they labeled her jealous, bitter, difficult. They had no idea she was the one who kept their golden child standing. No one knew about the sacrifice behind Zinnel's quiet life. No one saw her staying late at work to earn more. No one knew she was the backbone they never acknowledged. To her family, she was still the disappointing daughter, the shadow behind Ayanda's spotlight. But in Johannesburg, she was becoming someone powerful, someone independent, someone worthy. And the most ironic part? The family had pushed away the only person who ever held them together. A week before Thanksgiving, when Zinnel was finally starting to feel a little calmer, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it. After everything that happened, she didn't want more drama. But something made her pick up. A deep, calm voice introduced himself. "Hello, Zinnel. This is Kwame Mensah." She froze. She had heard the name before. Ayanda had been bragging about her new boyfriend for weeks. A wealthy Ghanaian entrepreneur, well-connected, successful, charming, the kind of man her parents adored instantly. He was everything Ayanda loved to show off. But why was he calling her? Kwame spoke politely, almost warmly. He said he hoped she was doing well. Zinnel's stomach tightened. She knew this was about the family. She braced herself, expecting judgment or criticism. Maybe he wanted to scold her, or defend Ayanda, or tell her to stay away. But instead, he said something she didn't expect. "I want you to come to Thanksgiving." Zinnel blinked, stunned. After the brutal messages, after being kicked out and blamed, the last thing she wanted was to return to that house. She immediately shook her head, even though he couldn't see her. "No, thank you. I'm not welcome there." Kwame didn't back off. His voice stayed steady. "You are welcome. I'm inviting you." She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Your invitation won't change their feelings." He paused for a moment, then said, "I understand, but there's something important I need to say. Something I believe you deserve to hear." His words hung in the air like a mystery. "Something important? About what? About Ayanda? About the family?" Zinnel felt her heart race, but she kept her guard up. She told him she didn't want to cause drama or be humiliated again. She explained how she had been blamed, insulted, uninvited. Her voice cracked slightly, even though she tried to sound strong. Kwame listened quietly. He didn't rush her. When she finished, he spoke softly but firmly. "You've been treated unfairly. I know that. And I think it's time the truth is heard." The truth. That word hit her like a spark. What truth? How much did he know? Why did he sound so sure? Zinnel tried again to refuse. She said she didn't want to walk into a room full of angry faces. She didn't want to be the villain of another scene. She didn't want to sit at a table where she was already judged before she even opened her mouth. Kwame's tone shifted, gentle but unshakable. "Please trust me. Just come. I promise you won't regret it." He didn't beg. He didn't pressure her cruelly. But there was conviction in his voice, like he had already made a decision and needed her there to witness it. The call ended with him saying one last thing. "This is bigger than you think." After he hung up, Zinnel sat in silence, staring at her phone. Her mind raced. Why her? Why now? What did he know that she didn't? For the first time in days, the sadness was replaced by something else, curiosity, and a growing sense that something major was coming. Thanksgiving wasn't just a family dinner anymore. It felt like a storm waiting to break. Thanksgiving morning felt heavy before it even began. Zinnel barely slept the night before. She kept going back and forth in her mind. Should she go? Should she stay? Was she making a mistake? Every memory of the harsh messages, the blame, the tears made her chest tighten. But Kwame's voice kept echoing in her head. "You won't regret it. This is bigger than you think." So she got dressed, grabbed her keys, and drove the long road from Johannesburg to Durban. With every kilometer, her nerves grew stronger. By the time she reached her parents' neighborhood, her hands were shaking. She parked outside the Masiko home, the same home where she'd grown up feeling unseen, and sat for a long minute, breathing in and out. She almost turned around, almost left, but something inside her whispered, "Be brave." When she finally stepped through the gate and walked up to the door, she could hear laughter, music, clinking dishes, her family celebrating without her. Her heart stung, but she knocked anyway. The moment the door opened, everything changed. The room went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze in the air. Every face turned toward her, shocked, confused, and annoyed. It felt like walking into a courtroom where she was already guilty. Ayanda stood near the dining table, dressed like she was attending a red carpet event. Her smile dropped instantly, replaced with disgust. "What is she doing here?" she muttered loudly enough for half the room to hear. Then, under her breath, she whispered, "Desperate loser." Zinnel pretended she didn't hear it, but the words pierced straight through her. Her parents stepped forward, their expressions dark with anger. Saifo glared at her like she was an intruder. Nombula folded her arms tightly, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Why are you here?" her father demanded. "Didn't we make ourselves clear?" Her mother added sharply, "You were told not to come. Are you trying to ruin this day too?" All eyes were on Zinnel. Cold eyes, judgmental eyes, eyes waiting for her to crumble. Her throat felt dry. She wanted to speak, but no words came out. She hadn't expected a warm welcome, but this level of hostility hit her like a slap. Ayanda smirked, stepping closer. Wow, you really can't take a hint, can you? A few relatives snickered. Someone whispered, drama again. The humiliation was thick in the air, heavy and suffocating. Zinel felt her heartbeat pounding in her ear. For a split second, she thought about running out the door. Then, suddenly, a calm voice broke through the tension. She's here because I invited her. Everyone turned. Kwame was standing near the center of the room, hands in his pockets, expression steady and confident. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere. Ayanda's face went pale. Saifo blinked in confusion. Namvula's jaw dropped slightly. Kwame stepped closer, positioning himself beside Zinel. Not in front of her, not behind her, but right next to her, like an ally. I asked her to come, he repeated, his voice firm, and she has every right to be here. The room rippled with shock. Ayanda's eyes filled with panic, like she had just lost control of something. Whispering spread through the relatives like wildfire. For the first time that night, Zinel didn't feel alone. Something was about to unfold, and everyone could feel it. The silence in the room felt almost painful. Everyone stared at Kwame, waiting for him to explain himself. Ayanda tried to force a smile, her voice shaky as she stepped forward. Baby, what are you doing? This is embarrassing. But Kwame didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed focused, steady, calm, too calm. He took a slow breath and spoke loud enough for every single person to hear. I need to tell the truth before I make the biggest mistake of my life. A ripple went through the room. Relatives leaned in. Saifo frowned. Namvula stiffened. Ayanda's hands trembled. Kwame continued. Before proposing to Ayanda, I did a full background check. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I'm a businessman. I don't enter a partnership without knowing facts. Ayanda let out a nervous laugh. A background check? That's ridiculous. But Kwame raised a hand, shutting her down gently but firmly. I found things Ayanda never told me. Things she never told any of you. The room held its breath. Zinel felt her heart race. Not out of fear, but out of something new, anticipation. Kwame's voice dropped, deep and controlled. Ayanda has been lying about her job for years. Gasps exploded around the room. Even the music in the background suddenly felt too loud. She never got promoted, Kwame said. In fact, she's been written up multiple times. She's been fired from 2 companies, and every achievement she bragged about, fake. Her LinkedIn, her resume, her titles, all lies. Ayanda's face went white. She shook her head violently. That's not true. He's twisting things. Kwame didn't flinch. He pulled out a folder and held up printed documents. Termination letters, performance reports, emails, proof. The relatives started whispering faster, louder. Saifo's face crumpled in disbelief. Namvula clutched her chest like she couldn't breathe. But Kwame wasn't done. She also has unpaid loans, unpaid rent, and credit card debt stretching back years. Ayanda stumbled backward. Stop. You're humiliating me. Kwame turned to the room. She wasn't surviving because she was successful. She was surviving because someone else was saving her. He paused. Ayanda almost faced legal charges for debt default last year. Do you want to know who paid it off? Everyone looked at the parents. Then at Ayanda. Then at each other. Kwame slowly turned toward Zinel. She did. The room went dead silent. People blinked, stunned. Saifo stared at Zinel like he was seeing her for the first time. Namvula's mouth fell open. Kwame continued. Zinel paid loan, cleared debt, covered rent, thousands and thousands of rands. Quietly, without asking for anything. Ayanda's knees buckled, and she grabbed a chair to steady herself. Tears streamed down her face. Not graceful tears, but raw panic. She saved you, Kwame said quietly, while you let everyone believe she was jealous and bitter. Ayanda collapsed into sobs, shaking uncontrollably, her mascara smudging down her face. The confident golden girl was gone. All that was left was fear and shame. Relatives stared at Zinel, shocked, guilty, speechless. The same people who mocked her now couldn't even meet her eyes. Kwame looked around the room and said, clear and sharp, the only honest person here is the one you treated like nothing. In that moment, the entire world flipped. Ayanda wasn't the star. She was the lie. And Zinel, the ghost, was finally seen. The room was already shaken, but what happened next hit even harder. Saifo and Namvula stood frozen for a moment, staring at the documents in Kwame's hands like they couldn't believe any of it. Then almost instantly, their pride kicked in. Saifo straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and said loudly, "This is nonsense. Our daughter would never lie like this." Namvula jumped in, her voice sharp and defensive. "Ayanda is successful. We raised her well. She works hard. People are just jealous of her." She shot a pointed look at Zinel, as if everything somehow still came back to blaming her. Relatives murmured awkwardly, unsure whose side to take. Ayanda was still crying, shaking, trying to catch her breath. But Saifo and Namvula stood firm, refusing to accept the truth. Kwame didn't argue. He simply opened his phone. "I thought you might say that," he said calmly. "So I brought proof." He tapped his screen and held it up for everyone to see. Screenshots of fake job titles Ayanda had used, edited resumes, emails where she lied about her position. He scrolled through bank records showing overdue payments, bounced transactions, and finally, large transfers from Zinal's account straight into Ayanda's. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shocked faces everywhere. A few relatives covered their mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, it's true." Nombula shook her head desperately. No. This must be a misunderstanding. Maybe those transfers are something else. Maybe Zinal owed her money. Kwame turned to her, voice steady. "Mrs. Masiko, there are timestamps, reference numbers, debt statements tied to Ayanda's name. And all of those payments came from one person, Zinal." Saifo's face flushed red, not from sadness, but humiliation. His voice cracked with anger. "Why didn't she tell us then? Why hide it?" Kwame answered simply, "Because she wasn't trying to embarrass anyone." The words hit like a slap. Relatives exchanged guilty looks. They all knew the truth. Zinal had never been the show-off type. She stayed quiet, gentle, humble. The kind of person who helped others quietly, even when no one noticed. And now everyone noticed. Neighbors from next door, drawn by the shouting, peeked through the open doorway. Some of them stepped closer to see what was happening. The Masiko family, always proud, always boasting about their perfect daughter and perfect home, were exposed in front of an audience they could never erase. Saifo stood there trembling, his hands clenched. Nombula's eyes were glossy, her voice barely a whisper. This can't be happening. But it was. Their perfect image, the one they cared about more than their own child, was crumbling in front of witnesses. All their favoritism, all their blind praise, all their cruelty toward Zinal had led to this moment. And right in the middle of the chaos, Zinal stood completely still. Calm, silent, composed. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't say, "I told you so." Her silence was louder than any speech. It was power. It was dignity. It was years of pain finally lifting off her shoulders. For the first time ever, everyone in that room truly saw her, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the troublemaker, but as the one who had carried the weight no one else could. Saifo and Nombula's humiliation wasn't just about the lies. It was about realizing they had loved the illusion and ignored the truth standing right in front of them. The room was still buzzing with shock, whispers, and the heavy weight of embarrassment when Kwame turned fully toward Zinal. His eyes, steady and warm, locked on hers. The chaos, the shouting, the trembling parents and crying sister, all of it seemed to fade into the background. In that moment, it was just the two of them, and the truth that had finally been set free. "You're the only honest one in this family," Kwame said clearly, letting each word sink in. "You're the one I respect." Zinal felt a wave of relief and quiet pride wash over her. After years of being ignored, belittled, and blamed, someone finally saw her for who she really was. She didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded, feeling the strength she had always carried in silence finally acknowledged. Kwame took a deep breath and addressed everyone else, his tone unwavering. "And because honesty matters more than appearances, I cannot go forward with this engagement." A stunned gasp spread through the room. Ayanda froze mid-sob, her mascara-streaked cheeks and trembling hands betraying the shock and fear she had tried so hard to hide. Relatives whispered, some openly staring, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The news sank in like a stone in water. The engagement was over. Ayanda's carefully crafted image, the one built over years of lies, was collapsing in real time. Saifo and Nombula stood frozen, their mouths open, their faces red with shame. The golden child they had always praised, the daughter they had elevated above Zinal, was exposed. And the family they had tried to perfect was shattered before their eyes. For the first time, they saw the contrast clearly. The sister they dismissed, the one they never valued, had been strong, honest, and selfless all along. Ayanda could barely speak. Her cries and protests sounded hollow, even desperate. She had lost more than an engagement. She had lost the trust of everyone around her. Kwame's calm words, the evidence he had revealed, and Zinal's quiet dignity left no room for denial. Zinal remained composed. She didn't gloat. She didn't taunt. She simply stood tall, shoulders back, eyes clear. Her parents, the neighbors, the relatives, they all watched her, and in that moment, they couldn't deny the truth any longer. Kwame smiled gently at Zinal and said, "You've carried more than anyone knew. You've been the rock in this family, the one who acted when no one else would. You've shown more courage in silence than most show in a lifetime of words." Zinal felt a warmth in her chest, a deep sense of vindication. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about tearing Ayanda down. It was about finally being recognized, about justice being quietly, powerfully served. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen, not as the overlooked daughter, not as the shadow, but as the strongest person in the room. And everyone, from her tearful sister to her shocked parents, knew it. The tables had turned, and the family that once rejected her now had no choice but to face the truth. The daughter they dismissed was the one who deserved respect, and they had finally realized. After the chaos of that Thanksgiving, Zinal left Durban with a quiet sense of peace. She didn't walk away angry or bitter. She walked away with her head held high, her heart steady, and her dignity intact. For the first time in years, she felt free from the shadows of her family's favoritism and lies. Back in Johannesburg, she threw herself into her life with renewed energy. She launched her own cybersecurity company, building it from the ground up with the skills and knowledge she had honed over the years. Her work quickly gained respect in the tech world, and she became a role model for young African women who dreamed of breaking barriers in male-dominated industries. She mentored them, shared her story, and encouraged them to trust themselves, work hard, and never let anyone's opinion define their worth. Months later, Zinal's story went viral. Social media lit up with praise for her strength, intelligence, and resilience. People from all over the world shared her journey, from the overlooked, dismissed daughter to the woman who quietly carried her family and came out stronger than ever. The attention wasn't for fame or recognition. It was proof that her courage mattered, and it inspired thousands to stand up for themselves. Her parents eventually tried to reach out, calling and messaging, hoping to reconnect after seeing her success. But Zinal didn't rush. She set clear boundaries, protecting her peace and refusing to step back into a life where she was undervalued. Looking out at her thriving company, her mentor around her, and the life she had built, Zinal smiled softly. She had carved her own path, created her own family, and claimed the respect she deserved. They uninvited me from their table, she thought. So I built my own, and I'm not seating anyone who never saw my worth.